Hello everyone, Pierce Nation here. Welcome to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck tier list for 2021, and it is June 15th, 2022. That is the stamp time. I've got time stamped, and we will get on with this tier list. Now, as you know, this is my personal opinion on where the meta is now and where it could go in the future, but as of the last YCS that was at Hartford, I'm going to base this tier list off of that and decks that you might not know are coming up, or might already be here. Now note, there are some on here, like Infinitrex on here 3 times and done that by accident, and there's a few of them that are on here 2 or 3 times, so we won't be adding those to it, but we got a few of them here. So of course I got Blue Eyes in there, so we're going to go ahead and start with our little dinos here. And if I had to guess, I'm going to say tier 2. They're not that flashy, but they are still dangerous, so you do have to watch the dinos that use Lost World, Miscellaneous Source. We all know dinosaurs pretty well, and they're still powerful. They're just not as powerful as some of the decks that will be later in tier 1, 1.5, and tier 0. B Troopers, I'm going to put them in Rogue because I don't ever have to worry when I face them. They do have some sort of power, but they're not enough to really stand out. DDD, I'm going to go ahead and put them in tier 1. They're going to be our first tier 1 here because they still have power, but they're not, branded stature. So that's what I'm basing my tiers off of. So I'm going to put DDD in my tier 1 here. It's a deck that I always watch out when I'm playing it, and always try to get ahead when I play it. So next we're going to do the Lyrilisk. I'm going to put that at tier 3 because even with Tri-Brigade, they're not that imposing. So like they do have some plays. They can put you some tough situations, but they're just I never really, like when I played Geist and Drytron, I never really fretted at this version. It was never strong as the Zodiac Tri-Brigade. So I'll put those there. Libermancer. So Libermancer, I'm gonna put them a Rogue. I don't ever see them. I don't ever hear about them. They're not really anything that really sticks out to me, so we're just gonna leave them Rogue. I mean, they do have some pretty good ritual monsters, which I could probably splash into a Drytron deck, but besides that, I don't really see any power coming out of that deck. So next on my list is Nordics, and I'm gonna put Nordics at Rogue. Again, they really don't do anything, so we'll leave those there, and they be what they will. This deck, I don't know. We're just going to stick it at Rogue because I don't know it. If you guys play this, I'm sorry, but I have no idea. It's probably something like Draco Slayers, but I've not heard of it. So we're going to leave it down there. We're going to get on with the Boral Sword line, and I potentially, with Boral Sword and all those, I'm going to say specifically Dragon Links with these, and I'm going to put this at a tier 1 because Dragon Links can be imposing. I don't think it's we'll go ahead and put Dragon Link at 1.5. I think 1.5 is pretty, pretty minuscule. It's not anything like too over the top, but it's not bad. Now, Eldritch, I'm going to go ahead and put it at 1.5 just because it does have potential to really pop off. But here lately, Eldritch has not been doing much of anything lately. So I'm just going to leave them at 1.5. It still does have potential to really pop off, but not quite. So we're just going to leave them there. I think it's a pretty good spot. I'll put... The only reason I'm not dropping this down the Rogue is because of Frightful Patchwork, and it's kind of broken. I'm going to say tier 3. Again, these tier 3s, this is nothing that you're seeing all the time at like YC or the regionals, YCS. You might see these very often at your locals, but you know, you don't see these when you go to like regional events. Every now and again you might. That's about it. I want to say rogue on this one. Again, I don't ever see those guys ever. Now, Altergeist, this might surprise you, but I'm going to put them at a 3. The reason I'm putting Altergeist at a 3 is because right now they're having a little problem, and the problem is all the other decks. So, like, Mystic Mime kills this deck, and any deck that is running anti-special summoning methods, it pretty much kills Multi-Faker and the whole link system. And if you can shit out the extra deck, Altergeist is basically dead. That's the whole problem there. Prank Kids, I want to put them at tier 2 because they got hit. They're Prank Kids meow meow, and the deck just hasn't recovered. Probably won't for a while. So we're just going to keep Prank Kids here. Now this one might surprise you, but the Salamander 8, I'm going to put it at 1.5. So these are decks that have basically 1.5 is. I didn't really explain 1.5 at all. 1.5 is the potential to be top of the meta, which is your tier 1, and then your tier 0 is the decks that hit it, and they're really hard to beat, but not impossible. That makes sense. So the Xyz Sharks, I'm going to put it at a 3 just because I haven't yet got to see this deck in action. So I want to build this, to be honest. Like, I think it has potential, but again, these are your tier 3s or your typical ones that you see at locals and not really anywhere else. But really, Altergeist should be tier 2, but I'm going to leave it at 3 just because that it does have some problems playing against Branded and some of these other decks, which is knocking it down the tiers. Sky Strikers, all due respect, I want to put them at tier 0 with Mystic Mime. When Sky Strikers have Mystic Mime, they get really tough to beat. They're not impossible, but you can beat them. Now, this is Sky Strikers with Mystic Mime, the same one that topped YCS. If I didn't put Sky Strikers up here, I would be biased. And I'm not biased. So, all due respect, I'll put Sky Strikers at the top. It topped an event with Branded on the forefront at full speed. So, and Rytron on the front at full speed. So, we'll go ahead and put Sky Strikers up here. I think that's a pretty good spot for again, I just got freaking sidetracked. I think it's a pretty good spot in the meta because it literally topped against all those other decks, Flaunderies, you name it, and they hit top. They won the event. That's incredible. So, yeah, we're just going to leave you right there. I'm pretty sure that's another Libromancer. If I'm wrong, you can correct me in the comments. Pretty sure it's what that is. Now, Tri-Brigade. Put Tri-Brigade at 2 because the Tri-Brigade engine is very good in some decks. Alistair the Invoker, which would be the invoked line, I'm going to put down there. Not really doing a whole lot, and I think this is Live Twins, if I'm correct. I don't know, I can't really see the thing, but if that's Live Twins, that's where I'm putting it, is Rogue. They're not real pulsy. Dark Magician, again, would go tier 3. It's not the weakest deck you'll ever see, but it's not the strongest either. Virtual World, I want to put it as 2. Virtual World does have power, don't get me wrong, but it's not that potent anymore. I mean, it does have good boss monsters, don't get me wrong. I like Virtual World, but it's not anywhere near this. Blue Eyes, I'm going to say tier 3. you know, it just misses meeting that meta mark every time. Same with Dark Magician. There's always a time where it just misses the mark. I don't feel like we've gotten the support we've needed for this yet in order for it to be over the top, and that's something that that's Konami's problem. They do that because they don't want to ban any of the Blue Eyes and Dark Magician cards, so makes sense. So this is the vampires. I want to put them in Rogue because I really ain't seen the vampires making really any moves. So we'll leave that there where it's at. And Dynamorpheus. This one is going to surprise you. I'm going to put Dynamorpheus at a 1.5. So I can slide over. Now, the reason I put Dynamorpheus at 1.5, you've seen my deck profiles where I've said that Dynamorphia has potential to be tier 0 and are tier 0. They do have potential to be tier 0, and you see me put them at 1.5. I didn't put them on tier 1. The reason I didn't put them on tier 1 is there is times to where if you're playing in an event and you run out of time, it goes by life points. Unfortunately, with Dynamorphia, you mill your life points so much that anytime you have to go to tilt time, you're automatically going to lose, which is unfortunate with Dynamorpheus. But that's the only reason it's at tier 1.5. So with that being said, we're going to look at the Shaddolls. I'm going to put them in Rogue as well because they're not really doing a whole lot at all. Moving on from that is Flandreese, and would you be shocked to say I'm putting it as tier 1? Not tier 0. It didn't... Flandreese really doesn't have power. I want to be honest. Like, when I look at powerful decks, I look at decks like Eldritch at times. There's times where Eldritch has power. Definitely the Boral Sword line. Salmon Greats have a lot of power. Dynamorphia have a lot of power. All these decks, besides you, really have a lot of power. Especially Blue Eyes and Dark Magician. You know, they've got lots of power. And Flandreese is just one of those decks that it gets you by. It doesn't really do a whole lot. So I'm going to leave it down there for now. The Unchained Abomination, again, I'm going to put that in tier 2. Unchained really hasn't done anything lately. It is a good deck, and it can work at times, so tier 2 is fine. Phantom Knights, again, tier 2. It's not, you know, anything that's extremely over the top. You know, it does, if it gets you in a Scythe lock, can lock you out from time to time. That's about it. Elemental Heroes, I'm going to put it as a rogue status underneath Blue Eyes and Dark Magician, Altergeist. Simply because if it ain't for the Phoenix Enforcer play and building this giant hero board that they can achieve, they don't really accomplish a whole lot. They don't really have a big FTK like the decks that are aligned above do. All the other decks have the ability to knock you out in that turn. And unfortunately, Heroes is just, they're not there. Cyber Dragon, I'm going to put them at 3 because of the new support that they got. They are potentially dangerous. Like I said, all the ones that are here are potentially dangerous. You know, if you just throw, that's why I made like, I think 5, let's see, we got what, 6 categories here, 5, 6, whatever I've got. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got 6 categories. The reason I made it like this is so that you could actually throw them in categories and know where these decks lie. Now, some of the ones that are in Rogue, I don't know them very well. I do know Alistair. Alistair, I'm going to keep it Rogue because these decks do tend to kill it pretty quick. But I'll go ahead and move it up. I'll go ahead and move Alistair the Invoker up. just because it is on the same plane as all these decks, so and potentially up with these decks, but I feel like with the new branded support, it kind of kicked Alistair the Invoker down the chain quite a bit, so we're going to leave it there for now. This is a deck that I have not seen, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw it in Rogue. If you guys know what that deck is and you mind telling me, that would be fine. I don't know what that's insinuating, so we're going to leave it there in Rogue. So let's go Sword Soul. Obviously, we're going to put him in tier 0. I don't think anybody's going to argue with me on that one. I think that's a smart thing to do. Especially with the way everything's going. You know, if you're ever thinking about building a deck, you know, I've got a pretty good idea of how the meta is. I guess it's a pretty good idea, not, you know, the greatest idea. The only reason that Virtual World and Print Kids are down this low, and even Tri-Brigade, is because they're missing that big major piece. I think Tri-Brigade's getting ready to get it, and we're going to go over it here in a second when I get to it. But so I think this is a pretty good set for how the tier list should be. I could be wrong on a few things, which is fine. It's okay to be wrong. So let's get on with Drytron. I'll put Drytron to tier 1 on the same plane as all these decks. As we all know, the Herald of Ultimateness Omni Negate is kind of annoying, and with 2 Ben 10 it makes it a little easy. If they bring back Eva, you can see Drytron hit tier 0 easy, especially if they're using Forbidden Droplet and Mystic Mine like they were using. So Plague Spreader Zombies. So we're going to go with just straight up zombies here. And I can put that at tier 2 easy because the new zombie support that came out is kind of broken and it works really good. So I'm going to put it at tier 2 just because I really haven't seen the zombies really hit their mark, but they're not like completely out. So I like to see zombies at tier 2. That's fine. Infinitrack is in Rogue. They're not doing anything here lately. It's kind of a moot point. You know, its only play is going to Super Dreadnought and just, you know, keep getting things over their way that way. And then there's these monsters, and that's about it. Infinitrack is nothing special. Mech Knights, Rogue, definitely. I don't even have to probably even talk about that one. That's pretty easy. The Kaijus, we're going to go Rogue because they don't really do a whole lot. I do like the concept of them, but they don't do a whole lot. Machinas, I'm going to put them at tier 3 because they mix well with the Infinitracks, but alone, this is about where they stand. They're not the greatest deck you're ever going to see by no mark, but they're pretty good. So since we have all of these on the tier list, we are going to go with the next best one, and we are going to go with a Punk, and we're going to put Punk at 1. Now, I think Punk does have some potential, so I think this is a pretty good spot for it. Obviously, I know that Punks are very powerful, and they mix really well with a lot of other decks out there. So putting them at tier 1, whether if it's the whole deck or just an engine, it's just as good. So I'm going to put Punks up there. I think that's a good spot for it. So next on my list is going to be the Weather Painters. And I'm going to put them in Rogue because they don't really do anything. Not that I could see. So I think Rogue is a good status for it. I just now noticed one of the major decks I wanted to put in here is not in here. And that is Marine Sis. But if I could put them in a category right now, I'd probably put Marine Sis at 1.5 with Dynamorpheus and all these, just because they have great potential to be there. So next one is going to be my Therians, and I'm going to put it at 1.5. The reason I put it at 1.5 is they have to be splashed with every other deck. So Therians have potential. every other deck, but not pure. They don't really do anything, and they're not that good. Now, like I said, if you're not splashing them in every other deck, then they're just a casual deck. They're not really that good. So the next one on my list here is Protoblights. 1.5. Not 1, 1.5. Again, they've got potential. They've got some good new support. But again, they missed the mark. So they don't quite have that. They're potentially dangerous. They run Super Poly as a 3, like as a necessity. You know, some of these other decks here can run Super Poly. Even these decks can run Super Poly, but they are basically, all their monsters are dark, so, and every one is basically a Super Poly target, so makes sense. Pure Plants, I want to go tier 2. And this is the sun whatever line. I know what this is. So I want to say tier 2 because it can be powerful. It does have very good potential. So I'm gonna leave it right there. I think that's a good spot for it. Next on my list is one that everybody is probably tired of at this point, and that is Branded. I'm putting him at tier 0. Obviously, if you don't, then there's something wrong with you, because this deck, unfortunately, is one of the best decks out. These 3, if you went these 3, I wouldn't blame you. I'm just going to be honest. Because they're very good, and they have cutting edge stuff. So next, we're going to go Pendulum. Pendulum's 1.5. Again, they do have potential, but they're not quite over the top yet. If they do release Heavy Metal Foes, Electromite, then you'll start seeing some shit. You'll start seeing me rank these a little bit higher, but until then, not really. They're nice potential. Despia, we'll put them in tier 1. Obviously, they mix well with Branded. I don't know any other Despia builds there are, so if you can think of one off the top of your head, you let me know. I don't know any, but I think that's a good spot for it since it most of the time is blended with Branded. The Adventurer package. So we're going to go with the package, not the deck as a whole. I'd say tier 1. The package is very well, and it's used in a lot of decks, especially Outledge. There are some Flonderies with Adventurer. There's some Drytrons with Adventurer. There's some Punk Adventurer. What's the other one? There is one more, and I cannot think of what it is. Is it on this list? I don't remember. But they do mix well with a lot of decks, and they really help out a lot of decks, especially with the Wandering Griffin Rider. So, that being said, tier 1, ABC. Now, I'm not a big fan of this deck, I'm going to be honest. And I'm going to say tier 2. I don't think it is that good. I don't think it's that potent. I think it's just enough. So, that being said, I'm going to put ABC right there. Even with Ethereons in it, I'm not going to say that this deck is tier 1, because I don't feel like this deck has enough firepower to back it up. Scareclaws, 1.5 definitely. Scareclaws can FTK you in 1 turn. That's all they need. They are potentially scary. All these decks are potentially scary. You have to think real closely when you're playing these decks in particular, because they all have different strategies, and they all can hit really hard, really fast, and they're all super poly targets. You have got to be careful playing this deck. These decks, anything at tier 1.5 and up, you be careful. Seriously. Ignisters, I'm going to say 1.5 again. They're potentially scary. They do have a very, very potent boss, to say the least. And if you ignore that, then that's your own fault. So next is the actual zombies. And for them, I will put them at a 1.5 as well. Because again, they are potentially scary. They can make big boards, they can make big plays, and they can negate a whole hell of a lot. So they're up here. You know, these Scareclaws, once they get their support in the new set that'll be coming out in Power of Elements, they are going to be over the top. And it's going to be crazy. So any other deck that I do not know, which is the following down here, if you know them, great. I obviously do not know these, or perhaps, well, I know some of them, you know, because I've got them in the tier list. But I'm just going to leave the rest of them down here. And for it to be what it is, you guys can see my tier list now. This is my official tier list of what I think is the most powerful decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! And how they're ranked. Right accordingly. There's some decks I probably left out of here. There's definitely some newer decks that are not in this tier list that probably ought to be, but I figured I'd highlight on the most popular decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Currently, and you know, talk about the power that they all have. So obviously your Sky Striker, your Sword Soul, and your Branded are your top 3 right now. Again, if you don't give Sky Striker the credit after topping the YCS in Hartford, then you're doing an injustice, because that deck beat all other decks when it came to YCS. So, very, very, very good deck, especially with Mystic Mind. It's a perfect deck for Mystic Mind because it doesn't build big boards. It just hits for 1500 and tags out. Like, pretty easy deck to do that with. Sword Soul, we all know Sword Soul is a synchro summoning machine and can very well be one of the best decks ever in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Again, they build absolute synchro monsters. Not only are the 3 Sword Soul synchro monsters imposing, but also they do have Baron de Fleur that they can just throw out at any time, which is also very imposing. And they do have more plays than that. But nonetheless, Sword Soul is definitely not a deck you want to mess around with. And especially Branded. Come on. I don't even have to talk about this one. Guardian Chimera, Masquerade Dragon, Alba, Lebellion, Albion. Like, come on, man. This deck is so insane. And it is a must when you play this deck to play 3 Super Poly. I mean, this deck is just ridiculous. With the Frightful Patchwork in it, it is just ridiculous. It is so hard to beat the decks like these. And in the whole same category, DDD, Flaunderies, Drytron, Punk, Despia, and the Water Enchantress Adventure Package, bro, those are definitely tier 1s. If those aren't tier 1s, you can go ahead and just tell me down below, because I beg to differ. And there's some people that'll say that there's no tier 0 decks. I beg to differ, because there's decks that, you know, they win a lot, and that's your tier 1s. You know, they win the majority of the time. And then there's decks that win almost 100% of the time. Like I would say like 90 to 95% they win every time. And the 3 highlighted above are the ones that can do so. You know, you always create tier 0 just to put, you know, emphasis on the tiers and where I think everything sits currently. So with that, your 1.5 are your potential tier 1s and tier 0s in the future. They're not right now, but they do have a lot of potential to make it there. And that's your Boil Sword or your Dragon Links. Very potential. They have a lot of potential. Your Eldritch, your Salmon Great, Dinomorphia, Therions, because they get new support, Predaplants, your Pendulums, Scareclaws, Ignister, and the pure zombie package. So those are your main decks that you need to look out for, and you can't ignore tier 2 or tier 3 either, because these are normally decks that people piece together differently, and you won't see the same thing. Like basically tier 1.5 to tier 0, particularly the decks are made exactly the same, and then your tier 2 to Rogue, all the decks are made with creative minds, and they're all made differently, and none of them run the same. It's just ridiculous how the decks really correspond with each other, because they're completely like asinine. They're completely different. None of them run the same. So with tier 2, you got your dinos and your Lost World, all of them. You got Print Kits, Tri Brigade, Virtual World, Unchained Abomination, your what are they called? Your Phantom Knights, your just basic zombies. You got your Civilian plants, and you got your ABC. I don't think ABCs are that good. I almost put them in 1.5 just because they've been doing really good lately, but I don't think they have enough firepower to really keep the chain going, because they're going to get hit eventually. So, and then tier 3, these are decks that are borderline tier 2, but they don't quite make it. And that is your Lyrilisk, your little I don't know what these guys are called, but it's the one that uses Fright for Patchwork. I think they're called like Patchwork or whatever. Altergeist, the Xyz, Sharks, Dark Magician, Blue Eyes, Cyber Dragon, Alistair the Invoked, and then your Machinists. I feel like all of those that I just named from the tier 3 section are very potentially can rise at any time. Again, I work on most of the decks that are on the tier 3 floor. I own 2 of them that are on the tier 1.5, and I own 1 of them that is on tier 1, and I own 1 that is on tier 0, which is branded Despia. So, with that being said, I feel that all the ones that are on your B Troopers, Libermancers, your Nordics, your Emancipators, Vampires, Shadal, Heroes, Infinitrack, Mech Knight, your Kaijus, and the Rainbow Painters, they just don't make it. The only ones that are actually questionable being down here is the Libermancers, Emancipators. I've seen Emancipators. Emancipators are pretty good, and the Vampires are kind of questionable. The most questionable one I have down here is Elemental Heroes. For the sake of Phoenix Enforcer, I'm going to go ahead and move it up. Yep, if I can do this without moving everything for me. So, hang on. Let me move Elemental Hero up. There we go. Because that's one I was really questioning myself about. Libermancers, I ain't seen them do anything, so I'll have to wait till I see Gibble. Again, this is my perspective from playing at locals. I haven't went to a regional bout in about 6 months at this point. I'm just digging to get my hands on a regional bout. You know, I play with guys down at a local card shop that go to the regional bouts, and I play against them. I do pretty good for myself, I think. And you know, I typically I play the threes. You know, I've got Cyber Dragons here, I've got Ultragrass there, I got Blue Eyes here. I actually have an Exodia deck, but that's beyond the point. I just, I play the game. I like playing the game. I think it's a good game. But the thing is with these tiers and the way I've got them right now, if you disagree, let me know down below. Let me know if your deck made it or if your deck did not. Let me know if you think this tier list would be correct in the way that I have described the tier list, or if you think that I'm wrong by having, the decks that are just almost that win 95% in tier O, decks that win 85% in tier 1, decks that win 70% of the time in tier 1.5, decks that win 65% of the time in tier 2, decks that win 30 or 60% of the time in tier 3, and decks that have a winning percentage below 50% in Rogue. Let me know if you think that is correct, and if it is, let's hear it. I really am interested to see what people will say about this tier list and the way I've got it ranked. So again, it's 90, 85, 70, 65, 60, and then 50 and below. So, this is just the way that I have the tier list set up. That way it's very easy. I can get everyone involved into it, not just like the meta or where, some people wonder like where is my deck listed, and I think I did a pretty good job of listing it. The only one, maybe the ABCs are put too low or the virtual world's put too low. And I think I'm pretty on point with everything else. The sharks, again, we'll have to see. I want to build them and I want to get involved into them and see what all of the hype's really about. But I'm more for the Scarecrows and the Dynamorphias at this point. I think they're really good decks that are getting a lot of support here in the future. I don't know anything about Dynamorphia, but I know Scarecrows have at least 2 more sets that they're getting supported, so they're going to be quite impeccable. So this is all for the tier list. I guess we'll meet back probably in December to talk about the tier list some more, or maybe a ban list hits and it's major, and then we got to go back to the tier list again. But for now, this is all the time I have. I'm Pierce Nation. I will see you in the next video. Pierce Nation out.